So April is over, and so too another bunch of reads. How did they stack up? Let's find out. Hey everyone, welcome back to the next chapter. My name is Christopher Navo, and I'm going to be your host. If this is your first time joining, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you think of the content. Today's video is all about everything I read for the month of April. And just to give you kind of some stats here, I read 5 books and 1 manga book. All 5 of the books I list as fantasy. One of them was listed sort of as a sci-fi fantasy blend, but a lot of the elements to the actual story were strictly fantasy. And then the manga, of course, being more of a historical fiction kind of read. So one of the contributing factors to this very successful month of reads was I participated in 2 readathons. The first readathon I'll mention, I kind of joined last minute, so I already had my TBR plans made, and that was Jake from the Bookish Drummers Discord channel, where his readathon was the Battle of the Bands, and I was on the Queen team. I do believe in the end we were 3rd place out of 4 teams. So you can contribute points by reading a book and using one of the prompts from your own team to gain points for your team, or you can utilize the prompts from one of your competing teams to take away points from them. Unfortunately for us as Queen, we did have the most points taken away from our team. Kind of one of the reasons why we might have fell into 3rd place. It's okay. It was all good fun, and I enjoyed myself. The other readathon that I was a little more prepped and kind of where I kind of molded my April TBR around was the TBR Blitz readathon held on the Keymark Discord. There I was on the Beanie Barbarian team, and I'm proud to say we won. On a personal note, I was able to hit all max points on that team. You can only read up to a max of 5 books and earn 3 points, 2 for prompts and 1 for providing a review. More about the reviews on my wrap up, but I was able to hit my max with the 15 points. So I was able to do the best possible for my team. Another successful factor to that readathon was our team leader, Tori, from over at Tori Talks. She was just full of energy, really got the team energized. She had this incentive of using a wooden axe and putting our names on it every time. When we read our first book, you got a star next to your name when you read your 3rd book, and then you got a star on the other side of your name when you read the 5th book, earning you that whole credit. So it was cool to see everybody's name on there, and I think it really just pushed our team, and that's, I think, why a big contributing factor to why we won. The main thing I want to take away from both of these readathons was the community. Up until that last month, I've been pretty passive on the Booktube community's Discord channels. I'm still relatively new, so still trying to find my footing and finding my way. And I gotta say, this really kind of opened up my shell a little bit, and I think it really drove the success for the reads, because I started making connections, and a lot of us were reading the same books at the same time, and now I'm like in talks with doing some collaborations with other booktubers. So I think that's really the main takeaway for me anyway. So I encourage you, whether you're a viewer, an author, or a fellow content creator, take a look at some of your favorite channels. Find out if there's a readathon coming on to you. If you love to read, I recommend joining one of these. This has been such a fun time. I think it was a big contributor to the success of my month. So let's talk about those reads.
Garbled memory is wrapped between him and the elf. Both one and the same with the light. Never existed. Always the light. Hiding from self. Life a game. Eternity's sublime tragic jest. Light swallowing everything. Darkness.
So first up here we have The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. This was actually the last read I did for the month of April. And what we have here is the beginnings of this holy war. So we have this religious sect called the Way of Edan, and they are being supported by the king in this centralized location called Torled, and they eventually want to go on this religious crusade and spread the religion all across the land of Ermenland. Because of this, they said to open up this eternal kingdom. Immediately, the first thing I want to mention about this book is the insane world building here. So Mr. Chase, by profession, is a medievalist. He's studied Old English, Old Norse, a lot of the language and myths and history here. And it really shows in this book. There's a lot of draws to, of course, classical fantasy here, Tolkien, as well as like a lot of the Anglo-Saxon poetry, such as like Beowulf and all that. That's all really prominent in this book. But I want you to keep in mind, this is all told with a modern voice. We get a lot of love for classical fantasy in this book. So that kind of brings us to our characters. First off, we got the classical races here. We have humans, elves, dwarves, trolls, and then like other creatures. And these are all given a unique take to each and every one of them. So the elves you see present in this book are not going to be the same that you see in Tolkien. I like that he gives a fresh outlook on these races. So as to the characters themselves, probably the more prominent POV here we have is Dayraven. And this is a little bit where I might have struggled with this book. Dayraven didn't grow on me right away. And you know what? That's okay. I think towards the end of him, I got to at least understand his character a little more and appreciate him a little more, but he just didn't like grasp me like the other characters in this book. Dayraven does fall under that classic fantasy trope of kind of like the chosen one and kind of like that naive kind of guy, and it shows in this book because there are a lot of very frustrating parts with a Dayraven, and you just want to pull him out of the book and just shake him. But but maybe that's on purpose, maybe that's, his character growth. And I hope we see a little more of that in upcoming books to this series. We have Sakara, who I enjoyed a lot more than Dayraven. I enjoyed her chapters right from the start. And she is this sorceress, and she's reading the resistance against the Way of Edan. And she follows her own traditional religion here, and I found her character a lot more engaging from the beginning, and I hope we get to see more of her in the continuing series here. And finally, this is where I think Mr. Chase really shines with character, and that was with his priest characters. So we kind of get that antagonist point of view, which I wish we got more of in fantasy. We don't often get antagonists or the villain, if you want to call them that, point of view too often. And there's a lot of complexity to these characters. They're not, I don't want to say they're, of course, true evil. They have some pretty crappy intentions, but they each have a different perspective, because we do get three perspectives with priests. We have Bledda, which is kind of the supreme priest, and then we have Yoramen, which is he was kind of my personal favorite of the three, and then we have Arna. And they each come across their own religion in a different way. Some actually truly believe in their faith, while others are strictly using it for power gain. So, I mean, all in all, I really had a great time reading this book. It was a great debut novel. It really shows that the author, he spent over a decade writing this, and that shows. And he had a really sharp prose. He did add a lot of lyric, kind of like reminiscent of J.R. Tolkien, but I don't want you to be turned off by that, because it's still all in all a modern voice. But he shows that his love for that old language is present in this book. So definitely give Way of Edan a chance. I think you'll enjoy it.
The smoke that came from the herbs was different, and it followed Rednow instead of simply dissipating, searching for his nose, eager to be inhaled. Rednow allowed the smoke to engulf him.
So next up, we have Seeds of War by João Silva. This is a EPUB arc that was provided to me in April that I was able to read and provide a review for. This book was released May 1st. So here we have a kind of like a gritty, grimdark fantasy. It's filled with, of course, your flawed characters, original creatures that are hand-drawn in the book, as well as the at least the EPUB book that was provided to me. And there's a well-crafted magic system here. So first and foremost, this was definitely a very character-driven book. The one thing I found very refreshing with Seeds of War were all characters were already established in the world. So you're not talking about anybody like new to the outside world or their little bubble. These were well-established characters already, with already a very deep history that you feel like, did I miss a book somewhere? But still introduced as a new character. So first we have Grimlore. She is known as the Viper, and she was she used to be a war veteran. Now she is raising 2 children, and she's running a tavern, and she's just growing this community around her. And she makes a living off the local fauna by utilizing them to create elixirs. Next up, we have Oberesis. He was once a thief who discovered a red orb and now has become sort of a god because he had performed this miracle. And he kind of plays off that he is indeed what is called God himself. And he was a very interesting character right off the bat. I found him probably the most enjoyable, but again, all 3 of them were really good. And then speaking of that third character, we have Red now. He is known as the Blood Collector. He is a seasoned leader of this mercenary group, and he wants to retire. He is haunted by visions and dreams of his deceased sister. Being a book, he's going to get called, of course, into battle one more time. And he is also what is known as a smokesmith. So this brings us to our magic system. This was another really strong element to this book. The smoke-based magic system here is by the burning of herbs and inhaling the smoke that comes from them, you gain these magical abilities. There are a lot of like bodily enhancement powers, a lot with the 5 senses, but also like strength and endurance and like a dexterity type of thing as well. And then like most kind of like recreational drugs, there are some drawbacks to inhaling and taking in too much. And so there is a nice limitation to this magic system. So it's just about how much you can handle. Again, a very refreshing system put in place here. I thought he did an amazing job presenting this. We get to see various types of magic play out in this book, and I look forward to seeing more. So as to regards to the pacing, the writing and all that is very sharp in this book. I didn't have any problem with the writing in any shape or form. It's all very straightforward. Nice, easy read. In fact, I was sad it ended too quickly. I would have actually liked it a little longer if I had a gripe about this book. But the good news is this is only book 1 too. So there's going to be subsequent books. So maybe I'll get more for my need in those books as well. But again, another recommendation. This is Seeds of War by João Silva.
No bars are ever as sturdy as those we forge for ourselves. The art of war never hesitates. All gambits, possibilities, and outcomes must be considered before the first move is made.
So next up, we have Pawn's Gambit by Rob J. Hayes. This is the second installment to the Mortal Techniques series. You don't have to read the first book, which was Never Die, but there is sort of like a time chronological order to these books. And the events that happen in Pawn's Gambit do happen after Never Die. So the premise here for Pawn's Gambit is once every 100 years, a god gets to sit on the Jade Throne. When the time comes for a new god to be selected to sit on the throne, a contest is held by all gods by choosing a mortal champion to win for their sort of like their patron god's cause. And if they win, how they win is by, of course, there's numerous ways you can eliminate your opponents, but you can also collect the most artifacts that are hidden throughout the realm here. So here we're introduced to our main point of view character, and that's Dayu Linsing, or she is nicknamed Yu, and she has a hero name. She's the strategist, and so she is nicknamed the Art of War. She is here we get a lot of theme of the game of chess, because not only does she like to play it, but you get to see a lot of that working with the gods, moving around, mortals in their own game of chess. She is often drunk. She is very driven by guilt for the most entirety of this book, because she feels guilty for the loss of her dead prince, and so when presented at the very beginning of this book, she comes across by Nasuko, who is the goddess of missed opportunities, and she requests you to be her champion for her chance for the throne. And she gives her you the promise of reuniting with her dead prince. Therefore, you accepts. The story from after reading Never Die, this one is a little bit of a slower paced story, at least in the very beginning. There's a lot of great moments here, though, because each time she's trying to find an artifact, it plays out differently each time, and she doesn't always succeed. There are some great rivals here, such as the ticking clock, which I thought was really cool, sort of like antagonist kind of character. Yeah, there was a lot of fun characters here, but I think despite the slower pace in Pawn's Gambit as compared to Never Die, I think the thing that really I enjoyed a lot was Yu's interaction with the characters that she come across. Some, come along to help her on her missions, as well as her interactions with Nusaku, the goddess herself, because Nusako travels a lot with her, and there's a lot of comedic moments as well, and we even get a couple point of view chapters from Yu's companions, as well as Nusako herself, which I thought was really cool to get a point of view with an actual god here. So another great book by Rob J. Hayes here. He has not proven me wrong. It's again it was a little of a slower pace than Never Die was, but that's okay. I think that makes sense, because Yu is more of a strategic person. So she's not all action. She relies on other people to do that action for her. So she needs to do the planning here, and I just loved it. I had a great time.
I'd rather be a nothing at the center of everything than a puffed up somebody at the edge of it all.
So next up we have Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. This is book 1 of the Tower of Babel series. Here we are presented with one primary point of view character, and that is Thomas Senlin. He is an anthropology professor who is obsessed with the Tower of Babel. It is apparently this wonder of the world that reaches far into the heavens, that makes even our modern day skyscrapers dwarfed in comparison. What he plans to do is, on his honeymoon with his new young wife named Mara, they are going to honeymoon at the 3rd level of the tower, which is called the Baz, which is sort of like this recreational paradise. To do so, he saves up, and they take a train to the tower. This story, I feel like the world here is, I want to say it's very steampunk, very Gaslight fantasy. I have the sense of like the Industrial Revolution with a little bit of mix of like Middle East, because we are talking about the Tower of Babel, a place called and so these are all very Mesopotamian origin. But I feel like this is like an alternative Earth and not so much like a real Earth. And I don't think anything is ever mentioned of it, anything else besides and the Tower of Babel itself. I like that he kind of gives you like this alternate sort of reality, and there's a lot of realism here. Of course, at least in the very beginning. So when they enter the streets of the marketplace below the tower, this marketplace is ever changing. So Maria gets lost in the marketplace. So Senlin, after a while, who decides can't find her, thinks she's smart enough to know that they were going to rendezvous on the third level of the tower. So he decides to enter it. And Senlin meets quite a few interesting characters along his journey to finding his wife. And these relationships are really important. You think that these are kind of like one-offs, but no, there's a lot of like meaning to each and every person that Senlin meets along this journey. And it's really well presented. There was one portion of the story that kind of took me out of it. I thought it was a little too nonsensical compared to the rest of the realism of the rest of the story. And it took me out of it a little bit, but it soon got me back in like right away. And it was a very minor portion of the book, and it was towards the beginning. So it didn't really bother me too much. So as to the themes here, as I mentioned, I feel like there was an industrial revolution time period here. So therefore, there was a classism, I think, was probably the most prominent theme in this book. Senlin is constantly talking about his lack of money, his lack of finances, his worry of not getting home and getting his wife home. And, you get the sense also that the lower levels of the tower, of course, are for the working class. And whereas the upper portions of the tower, they can afford, taking an airship up to some of those higher levels for those who can afford it. And yeah, I thought that was really important to show that theme here. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading The Arm of Sphinx. Hopefully in May. It may get pushed to June, depending. My TBR is pretty aggressive. But again, another recommendation to read Senlin Ascends if you haven't. So real quick, this the fifth book I'm going to mention here, this is just going to be a quick wrap up to let you know. I did finish Black Sun Rising by C.S. Friedman. This is book 1 of the Cold Friar trilogy. Because I am planning to read the other 2 books to this and compile a video for my retro read segment, and this is going to be the first series that I'm going to wrap up on that. I'm not going to go into too much of what I talked about in here. However, I will say it was a fun read. It was very dark. I was really surprised by the tone of this book. The main characters, the male characters anyway, I really had a good time following. Unfortunately, the one primary female character in this book, I just didn't care for too much. She started off actually kind of strong, but she kind of fell into typical, I want to say, the 90s female character trope, unfortunately. And it was a little cringy for me a couple times, but all in all, I had a good time. The magic system is some top-notch stuff. And again, there's a lot of dark themes in this book. There's the primary theme here I get was just passion. There's just this thirst and lust, to whether it be for power or for people, or just the use of the magic. It was what the ideal theme here is. But again, I won't go into too much more. I like to see things change and develop again for all the characters in this book, going into the second book, which I hope to have either read late May or June. And finally, for the month, I finished off with the 4th volume of the Vinland Saga. This was actually the last volume to the first arc of this series. Again, we're following Thorfinn and kind of like his kind of like his earlier days, his younger childhood days, and his seeking for vengeance. And it sort of comes to an end here in a different way than I expected. So, of course, I don't want to ruin anything because I don't want to get into spoiler territory with this wrap up. But I was really surprised on the direction it went. Needless to say, book 5 is going to take off in a totally new chapter of Thorfinn's life, and we'll see where he ends up going. And again, that'll probably be at the end of May for me. So yes, and all in all, another successful month of great reads for me. One thing I didn't mention at the very beginning of this video is, as part of the TBR Blitz Readathon, I had to provide a review, whether it be on Amazon or Goodreads or another review platform, and I put those on Goodreads. So again, normally I don't do Goodread reviews because I'm not a fan of the star system, but to earn the point, I went ahead and did that. Those reviews will also include Black Sun Rising, so you will get an opportunity to see where I stand so far on that trilogy as well. Any of these books sound interesting to you that I talked about today and gave you my final thoughts on? Or did you read any of these already, and what did you think about them? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, my name is Christopher Navo. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next chapter. Take care. Really was investigated. I'm not investigating anything. Next up, we have Never Gambit. No. Next up, we have Never Gambit by Pons Gambit. Wow. So first up, I have. So next up, I have. Oh God, none of this I can use. Oh my God.